fine.
My topic is, how important is it that people be compelling in an ecosystem? Can they just be? And I'll set it up with this. I've been working with a church. I usually work with a couple churches a year. This is a church that's been around for about 100 years. We just did an 8-week deal on community on mission. And at the end of it, me and the pastor were chatting it through. And I said, I don't think you have one person that's compelling enough to be able to get people to come into their living room, let alone a coffee shop, whatever. And he said, I agree. So he made the comment, he said, look, these people have been coming to church for 100 years. Most of them are about there when it was founded. But church allows you to be a non-compelling person. Like, you don't need personality to keep growing a church gathering. But in a kingdom ecosystem, when we're in every nook and cranny of society, trying to get the peace of our city, and how compelling do our people need to be? Is it a factor? Or can God grow an ecosystem when people aren't personally compelling? And we'd have to try to do this talk in a positive way.
Well, this is kind of the happy hour stuff a little bit. So there's that element, but there's also another sub-element of it too, that compelling in what context and in what way.
Right.
So the key to the conversation is, to me, it's two parts. So I've been thinking about this cheesy 90s youth group analogy a lot this week because we've been watching a lot of playoff basketball. And we're watching playoff basketball, NBA playoff basketball, while we're playing highly competitive AAU youth basketball. My 16-year-old, my 14-year-old, and actually my 9-year-old too. And there's this moment where I'm watching them train or something. They're like at the gym, and I've been building a storage unit at our gym, and so I'm up there a lot the past week, working on this 8x8x8 storage unit or storage closet off the gym floor. And then the boys are up there working with some other kids, and it's this. So I want to tie this into the compelling conversation, because it's this tie-in to what it's like to be a spectator and what it's like to be a participator. And if you look at an NBA game or a collegiate high-level March Madness basketball game or whatever, and you look in the stands, it can sometimes be a funny exercise to see how unbelievably unathletic these people look. And then especially if you've ever been to a game and you see them do like the halftime thing, make a layup, a free throw, and a three, it's hard to compute that this guy, this grown man, 40 years old, that's sitting on the second row of a professional basketball game cannot make a layup. Right. How is this possible?
How the different, yeah.
Like, how do you love this game this much that you have your Kobe jersey on, you paid $2,200 to sit on the second row, but you can't make an actual right-handed layup? And so it's just been sitting at the forefront of my mind of, we've developed an ecosystem, if you will. I don't think the church is actually an ecosystem. I think it's definitely not an organic ecosystem. The church, as we know it, is more like a greenhouse, just this man-made ecosystem where not only is it possible, but it almost feels like it's preferable to not be a participator, to not be engaged in the actual. So this is what I mean by compelling. There's no compulsion for the actual spectator to have any skill in the actual work itself. And every once in a while, you call one onto the floor for a...
But like the basketball game, they still have passion for the story.
Yeah. So you go, well, hey, engage in the story. Like I think about, obviously my kids are young and they'd be demolished by any level of pro player. But I think about Jude being brought out, or honestly, Ezra, my 9-year-old. I think about him being brought out on that halftime thing. I'm 85% confident he'd hit his layup, his free throw, and his three in 1 minute. He could participate because he's in the. Mm-hmm. So when you say compelling, that's a hard conversation because people are going to think of just personality.
Like that's what bothered me about the framing of it too, is you went compelling personality.
Yeah. And it's not personality, it's engagement and participation. Yeah. When, like, let's say you're taking...
And some basic skill level.
But what I'm saying is that's developed in engagement and participation. If John runs this thing called the Conscious Party, or let's say you had like a dinner, the banquet thing. Yeah, we did one too for years and years in Birmingham. We actually did an open mic night that modeled your Conscious Party.
Yeah, we're doing another one here in June 11th. We're running. We're trying to bring it back. We're gonna do it at the Drop. See how it goes.
All right, so those are just two events. We'll take those two. The banquet is like a black tablecloth catered event for our friends, mostly for our friends living on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious Party is like an open mic night where people come and hang out, do cool things, get a chance to express themselves. If you invite a person into that has absolutely no experience whatsoever in engagement or participation in that type of table, they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle to connect unless they have like a really high level adaptability. For the most part, they're going to struggle to understand the environment. But if you invite someone who is introverted, a little bit weird, isn't thought of as culturally just like smooth and they can compel people, but they've been involved in this environment for 12 months, 18 months, 2 to 3 years. Anyone's going to be impressed at their ability to both compel and draw in that particular environment.
We have a good handful of people that in our ecosystem that I would say are some of our most incredible servants. They show up, so they're in it. But by themselves, I don't think would necessarily fill up the living room, so to speak, or be able to draw other people to their thing. But they work really well because they're there. They're shooting there.
Okay, so I think this is like some familiar territory that we've like talked through with different like maybe language around. But like, first of all, we have identified historically that there is going to. Well, one, I want to just say that I think that what is compelling is the vision of the kingdom. That is the thing that grips us and compels us. But and in the way we're using compelling, though, it is like when you see someone engaged in the work, maybe someone could. And I do think, Hugh, to your original question, I do think there is personalities for whom and this is the apostle prophet kind of leadership piece where it's like there does take someone who can convey that message, that compelling message, embody that thing and bring people into that in the initial tables, right? Like it's like that initial, that is not like that is a calling. I think that is a specific thing. It might not be exactly a personality, although when we get a bunch of us together, we find that we have a lot of personality overlap, and that is interesting. I don't think it's, I do think there's something there for like the personality that sets the table for the Conscious Party that goes, I have a vision for this. I make this thing happen. But then as people get invited into that, and I think to what we're saying now is like, as you're at the table and you take on that, the more you kind of do the work or take on that aroma, and embody that kingdom in the present space, then you actually begin to be an enigmatic figure to other people in the culture that we're in, and that is compelling. Like, wait, why are you living like this?
We've sat around joking about people in our movement that are good hangs and people that are not good hangs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
We've seen some people that are absolutely not good hangs create worldwide movements that
100%.
thousands. So clearly, you don't have to be however you say that eggy word, to create movement around the kingdom, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there might be some other, personality, draw ability, woo, that are going to be important along the way in certain apostolic functions, certain evangelistic functions.
Yeah.
But this church I started out with, we agreed that we shouldn't continue. And he said, yeah, I just don't, it doesn't matter what we do, these people will probably not get it. We had a woman on week 7 of 8 weeks just blurt out, well, what do you do with gay people? I just don't agree with that lifestyle, so I don't want them in my house. And I just remember thinking, I have no idea. We can't go anywhere with this. So there are things that shut it down. Like, you just are not going to be able to even have them in your ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that also, someone would go, well, you got to train it and challenge it. And I did. I tried for 10 minutes in front of the whole cohort, and you could just tell the lights are not on there.
Yeah, but okay, let me ask you a question though, and this is based on the one personality you're describing. Is like, I just think like there is a way in which you want to seed. You want to be careful what leaven you're building with, right? So it's like can you do this out of religious communities?
Yeah, watch out for the leaven of the Pharisee.
And you want to go, a little yeast works its way through the hole, but it's like, what do you inoculate with when you begin? This is actually why I'm saying the kingdom is compelling. It's like the kingdom ethos is the seeds that we sow, is the things that we have to do, is actually what is compelling. I do think you're probably right. There are people for whom they hold sway or command or they give voice to this thing that is compelling, that the vision itself is compelling. But like, you can't, that would have to be converted, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not a house we want to go to. That's not a house we want to go to.
And when it's understood as contextual, there can be some navigation that helps people feel empowered, not so insecure. A really effective guy, younger man, came to in the environments that I've seen him in, which is they would be considered like traditional. He can lead the heck out of a Bible study. He's great at like group prayer, maybe, or like guiding people through some sort of, traditional connection with God, something that I would really enjoy.
Yep.
He was virtually incapable of connecting at one of our environments the other night. There was like about 80 young people from like inner city Alton. And I think he could feel extremely insecure in that environment. The two things I would say is, one, if you want to be compelling in this environment, you have to engage in this environment for an extended amount of time. Like, you got to be present here, and you've got to just walk into this space. The second thing is, maybe you're not supposed to be here. Like, maybe I just think it's important to like identify what we mean by compelling. And I think what we mean is kingdom archaeology, artistry, and architecture. But what is set up and what Hugh's exposing is church is 100% a spectator sport. and there's no possible way to deny it.
So it's going to produce a lot more awkward people
When
it needs to.
When you put them in the game.
Yeah.
So let me.
As long as they remain spectators, they're good. They seem.
Yeah, but
they're doing their job.
Yeah.
If you look in the stands of any
they don't look weird when
sporting
somebody
event,
brings them a popcorn and a soda, and they look fine on that.
They're like, we got this. We know this part, and then we're going to pay the professionals, right? I mean, it's an easy analogy. We're going to pay the professionals to put on what we're paying for this event, and we're going to come and watch the event. But then you say, hey, we're doing a little halftime show. Why don't you come and throw out the first pitch? I'm mixing sports, but why don't you come and run a 40-yard dash? Or, hey, we need someone to throw out the first pitch. Have you ever seen these people throw out the first pitch? It's hilarious. I mean, it's crazy.
It's a 45-degree angle away. Yeah,
and that's kind of what we're at least coming around is. It's not that you don't have the right personality. It's not that you're not like a good hang. It's you have no.
The game has passed you by.
Well,
or you've never even engaged in it.
So in the book, you use the image of Jesus in the wild, and you have the bear that is kind of the caged kind of. Okay, so the zoo animal is another like image that comes to mind. In fact, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because now we have a staff that we've brought on from like a very substantial church, and was like, by the way, this person is like heroic in effort and capacity and capability, and like we won an amazing leader over and got them over to join our team and help and build out and work as a director for the drop. But the image of a zoo animal keeps coming to mind. By the way, they're killing it, they're crushing it, but my concern has been, have they been a zoo animal? Have they been fed on time regularly? They haven't had to hunt for their food. They've been protected from danger. And so like we're using the language of sports and spectators, but I think also like as another to couple it with your Jesus in the wild thing is like, and I have worried, and now I'm watching her, and I'm like, oh yes, there's a lot of lessons to learn out here. But like if you let a zoo animal out into the wild, they die. Because they haven't had to and so I think like this maps to your ability to like throw a pitch. If that was the game, if they had to play the actual game, they'd get killed, right? And in the actual environment of the world, out in the wild, where it's real life, like this isn't pretend. And that's an interesting point of reflection to me about what we are actually doing. Like you said, use the greenhouse analogy earlier, where we're actually setting up a spectator sport, a room filled with bleachers where a couple people perform in front of them, so they get fed on a Sunday or whatever. And just the image actually works really well all the way up to the level of the staff. That is like, but when you now move them into the wild, to the event you had the other night or to the place, it's like it turns out not just like, oh, they're bad at this, but this can actually be like detrimental or deadly. Like they've and because the skills haven't been developed, or a lot of things have atrophied, or expectations have been, I expect lunch at noon. I expect, whatever. It's like, because I've had this experience for so long, it comes to be like almost a need. Like a privilege turns to a need at some point, where now you get out and you're like, you don't have the crutches on anymore. And turns out you've never built the muscles needed for the environment.
So what are we saying? You guys have made very clear points. I think you actually got right on the better conversation, which is we're not expecting the people to be the most compelling. The kingdom has to be way more compelling than the individual people. Some people are just they're not ready to go out into natural habitat yet. But should we spend our time trying to get people there, or do we just have to acknowledge it and manage it and guard against it? Like, what are we really saying in this?
So I think we definitely get people there. how we do that is maybe like a whole nother episode. But the idea is to get people to play. That's always been the idea. Is there's such a direct connection in all of this of professionalism, and I'll confess that like my past 12 to 18 months have been a really interesting journey, even in like the Brave Cities conversations, because I look around me and every conversation, I feel like if I'm really sensitive and I try to pay close attention, every conversation throughout the country or the world, at some point, barring maybe 5% of the people in my life, tend to drift into this idea of professionalism. Where's the money?
Yep.
Where's the power? Who has control? What are we getting for this? What are we getting? Like, what's our return for this? And one of the conversations I've been having with Lindsay a lot at night is, how do I return to that place that we had in our 20s when it was just about the passion? Like you said something in the fireside chat last week, John, about being an amateur.
Yeah, I think about this all the time. The word means like for the love of. That's like where we get the word, is like someone who does something for the love of.
And I want to say, and I want to confess in my own life, and I just want to confess, period, I don't find myself in rooms almost ever anymore where that feels like that's the spirit of the room. That we are obsessed, that this is what we think about all the time, that almost like we are sojourners here and we know it's only for a few weeks. One of the things that launched my entire ethos in all of my work for the past 25 years was a little trip that I went on as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old with some ministry guys from my university. And when we were there, the intentionality and the moment by moment strategic focus on what we were doing was overwhelming for me. And then if you've ever been on a trip like this, you recognize the camaraderie and the connection that you leave with, because a common fight builds a common bond that you can't explain. It's like in a 2-week time period, it can almost be lifelong.
Yep.
And that experience shifted my entire worldview of what it meant to be actually passionate about something that you might never get anything in return for. Because this trip, we actually had to pay for. We had to raise our own money to go on this trip to just sort of engage in what it meant to be salt and light, right? So I'm kind of saying I'm on this pilgrimage now, like second half of my life, going, where are the amateurs? Where are the ones? Because I feel like it's almost been fully lost in me. Where are the ones that say, I do this for the love of it? That's it. The return is, I'm not even thinking about the kingdom return, like the Corinthians 3 stuff, like your reward in heaven.
Yeah. But okay. But to be fair, I want to name this though, because I agree with that. But at the same time, though, like if you got a bunch of geeks that are gathering in a club around any amateur activity, they're amateur sculptors or sword fighters or whatever. They're just like interested in this thing.
Both.
And they spend a tremendous amount of money on that thing. But if you asked any of them, you don't get any return, you don't get anything out of this, they would look at you like you're absolutely insane. I get purpose and meaning and skill set and like and this is like when you go in the kingdom, forget like by and by, but if you could just not be materialistic for a second to go,
hold on. Stay there until they go to an event. There's a conference of geeks that like sword fighting and sculpting.
Oh, both. Okay.
And everyone they meet has platforms, money coming in, and all the conversations. They go in the green room and everybody's like, well, did you get a connection there to make money for this thing and network? And then I guarantee you those amateurs will start to feel like amateurs. And they'll start to wonder, why am I not getting what everyone else is getting for this? So keep going. But
no, that's so good because the analogy works. And then when you talk to the old guy that like found a way to run the stand and give the talk and be like, and perhaps they've held that in. Because by the way, it's not like if you make money from this, you're not an amateur. That's, to be clear, I'm like, I understand we usually will say, but I'm talking about the spirit of the engagement.
Yep.
When you make money, you call it professional, but I'm not worried about that. And we often think even skill set, but amateurs are often wildly better than professionals in things. But if you can stay in that space and you found a way to make some money at it, you can stay in that amateur heart. But what you're confessing, what you're getting at is like, it's so easy to lose your way once you engage like in this professionalization of the thing, of the trade, now it's a trade. If you talk to the old guy or the people that have been doing this for a long time, they're going to bemoan the thing that they lost. And they're at home talking to their wives at night going, how do I get that fire that I had when I was 20, where I just went out there and got like swatted with swords and loved every minute of it because I was just in it for the love of the thing. And it's like, that is the trade-off that we're making. And so we turn toward a materialistic gain for professionalization or respect or something measurable or seen now. And this is back to like, you can have that reward. Like, this is like, some people do it to be seen by others, and you can actually have that. It's available to you. It's not better. It's not better. I feel like this is a topic we come around all the time, but this is a very interesting way for us to kind of engage it, I think, because it is exactly the parallel of what we're talking about, to say like, there is, and this maybe in some sense is just a call to like return to your first love, to the thing that you loved at first, so you can, and then finding the people that are engaged in it, like your trip, like shoulder to shoulder work. So these relationships and communities.
What makes this conversation interesting is it's about being compelling, being a compelling community and a compelling person. And so it has a different origin than we've come out at before. And I guess,
yeah,
I like the way this is coming around though, because I still think we can stay with that. But like in the book, we started with the surfing analogy, right?
Yeah.
If you walk along Passion Point and you look down on usually what's a couple hundred surfers, anybody walking by there would go, "That's so great." But like in the surfing world, the compellingness isn't their ability on the board. It's just they're out there. Like they're actually, so to be a part of that surf community or surfing as a lifestyle, you don't have to like stand out and be hanging 10 on the tip on a longboard. You just have to be out there, and anybody watching should go, I'd rather be there than here.
Yeah.
Spectating on this thing. And I feel like the call to the kingdom as the compelling entity, but life in the kingdom is the actual compelling aspect of it. And you're not going to stand out that much from the other ones. There's a couple of them that you can tell they've been at that a long time. But anybody out surfing on a beautiful 83-degree day in Passion Point after they had a big fat burrito down at the point, you know, it's like you go, that would be a great life. And I think when we want people to look into an ecosystem, that's all we want. We want them just to go, I'd rather be in the water than my 9 to 5 doing everything for me.
But your surfing, the surfing experience is really important, because if you grab a blue board, you got to read the book to know what I'm talking about. But if you grab a blue board and you go down to the water, especially where the popular spots are, there is going to be a significant moment of what are you doing?
Yeah, that's
here?
like the lady that doesn't know what to do with a gay person.
Right.
Inviting somebody to her initial mission. She's trying to jump in, but it's not going to go well.
But something will happen. Anybody would tell you something will happen 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 3 months in, where you're still going down there. Somebody's going to give you a different board, or at some point somebody's going to say, hey, it looks like you're actually doing this. Let's go up to waves and fades. And I want to show you some things.
Yeah.
And then a year in, you're the one compelling other people. My point is it's just, this is not a spectator sport. It's just, it doesn't even make sense. This is why the table imagery is so important. Is you can't spectate at tables. There is no spectating at tables. You can come and sit and still engage and experience, but eventually you have to get up and leave and either come back or not come back to the table. But there's no moment where you just go, even if your table is a bar that does live cover shows, you're still engaging in something communal and expressive and contextual. But when your table is literally built for people to come and spectate what we would say is so-called kingdom work, expository teaching, or Bible study, or musical worship in rows, whatever it may be, then you are creating the very thing. You're incubating and birthing the very thing.
That's right.
You will then do a sermon series to tell people not to be.
Well, then you look at that room of people and you say, there's no one compelling here.
That's what I'm.
Of course not. Oh, what do? We just give up. There's no one compelling. It's like, what? That's like growing a strawberry greenhouse and be like, well, there's no tomatoes here. It's like, obviously not.
All right. So actually, this has been great. However, what do we do with this? Is this just a night? Is this just one of those talks where you go, okay, well, that's why I'm always going to have trouble with this person? Or does it mean that we should dive in and try to, the Bible verses on this are immense. That you're a letter read by everybody. You're an aroma. Paul saying, I decided to hang out with you guys until Christ be formed in you. Obviously thinking about the life of Christ, not just the doctrine of Jesus.
Yeah.
So does it mean at a leadership level, we should probably prioritize table builders? People that want to get in the water, for sure. We should prioritize, strategize our time there. We have to always be building ourselves, because that's what compels other people. So can't ever be a consultant on this thing. Have to always be in it. Got David, our coffee guy, had Alejandro with him, this young guy wanting to learn how to roast the other day. I just thought it's compelling to see him have somebody on his hip. So you go, okay, I can see the movement growing there. So, do we give time? Do we try to get people out of churches to join our stuff? It wouldn't seem wise, because we're making tomatoes and they're a strawberry.
So I want to share something with you guys.
Recruiting into our brave cities or not?
So I'd like to share something that I think is more of a macro theory of change conversation we've had. I was at a breakfast thing recently with a very smart, very, very, very smart dude who is constantly referencing books I haven't read and all these things. And he has interest in lots of different things, but we were kind of talking about, we've talked about so let's go back, the reference point being, don't negotiate with Babylon. We're not trying to change our cities, but we're building this alternative, right? And we were riffing on, because this guy's space has a lot to overlap with the education system. And that's always a good or easy, for instance, like, it's like, well, I was saying, like, it's not like we want to burn down this system or whatever. It's like, but an alternative has to be built. Like, I'm not a big, like, it was around reform. Like, I was like, but it's good because right now, like, kids are getting watched and there's food there. So, like, let that be. But we need to build something else that is compelling, that the teachers will come over to, the students. We talk about, like, the transferring of citizenship or coming over to this other thing. And he referenced some old book that I won't be able to tell you what it was. And he was like, he used the language of, like, reform versus revolution. And he made very clear to me, he said, I am more interested in reform than revolution. And I thought, I wonder if we agree. But as he went on, what he actually described was, and he used the education system. He's like, everything you're saying, I agree with. Like, we need a lot of experiments in education. Turns out Florida's a great place to do that because we have, like, the most lenient terms around education. But, like, here in Florida, he's like, I'm very excited. You have all these different school experiments. So whether it's homeschool or VR school or this school, that school, there's all these things popping up. And he's like, and what that does is it creates alternatives for people. This is like all the same lane. He's like, and then he's like, picture like a large ship that is sinking. And he's like, this is the system. And he's like, but the more people that get off of it or flee it, this all maps to what we were saying because of these other compelling experiments or alternatives that have been built. They can get off of this. He's like, but the more people, this is what he meant by reform, because I was like, yeah, that ship's sinking. It's just going to sink. And this even goes back to, like, conversations we've had around hope for institutions or whatever. But he's like, this is how reform works. He's like, over time, enough people get off of this boat that it's more buoyant. And it can address some of its leaks and holes, but also it's going to have to look at what everyone's going to and start changing how it works. Because it's the logic of institution is don't die. So he's like, at some point, that institution, he's like, and you can look back over history. This is like how things have actually changed systematically, is all these alternatives were built. People fled to the alternatives. Then the empire thing, the system thing kind of went, we have to retool this and learn from these alternatives for the sake of our survival. I'll just tell you, and one, I hope this ties to what we're talking about for you clearly. For me, it was like, this is the compelling alternatives. But what I loved about this, to reference an older conversation for us, is that it was the first conversation where I personally felt like, oh, that might be how we've talked about, like, what is the principalities and powers laying their throne, their crowns before the throne, like kneeling before the throne. I was like, how does that? I've struggled with that turn kind of in the Wink narrative or whatever. And it was the first moment in this conversation, I think ever for me, where I was like, oh, maybe there is that seedling of hope of how that works. And this overall, I think, was something about a theory of change. But I think at the root, as we've been talking through this idea of it's about compelling alternatives. So your question is, like, should we try to get people out of those churches? And I'm like, well, yes, but also not by direct pursuit as much as, like, setting tables, surfing training. You have a place to learn how to surf. You have a place to come weekend warrior it, to come down and help out at my conscious party, serve at my drop-in center, get coffee at my coffee shop, participate in our whatever. And that becomes the route by which they go. There is, at some point, it's actually more like an invitation to transfer citizenship, to say, actually, this is the table I'm going to orient myself around, as opposed to the spectator table.
I like it.
Yeah, that's a good ending. There's some other layers to this. Because that sounds great until you find yourself in a forgotten place among a forgotten people, and
you're desperate to find some
surfers. But that's like part of the conversation, not the one to have today. I think the best and most liberating work there is to follow the way of Jesus in being salt and light on the earth, and have a wide funnel for anyone who wants to come in and participate to come in and participate. For some reason, it feels different to me. I don't know if it does to you in Tampa, John. I'd love to get two other cities on and just ask them, but it feels different to me than it ever has in 20 plus years. It feels like there is so much unthinkable and controllable distraction. And it's kind of the Jonathan Haidt idea with if you go really down the rabbit hole of the coddling of the American mind and how all of this that we're surrounded by has just made our energy and our minds into distracting mush. I don't want to go down that road right now, but I do want to say that just having a great cove, like crafting a great cove where there's awesome surf happening, doesn't feel like quite enough to me right now. It feels like when all the surfers are going over to the water park that create their own waves, where they can just ride on a surfboard with a bar and they really don't have to risk anything. It's still...
There's no great white sharks.
There's no great white sharks. There's no danger. There's no... It's... I think true surfers would say, we don't care about that. We just love the waves. There is a question in me for another talk of how do we get a few more surfers over here? Like the rocks are starting to, like, we need some cultivation. The beaches are getting covered in algae and seaweed, and I find myself not even getting to surf that much anymore because I'm constantly cleaning the beaches and working on, the architecture around we still want to surf, So I want to acknowledge what you said, that the most liberating work there is, I still feel like, is just being able to build the city, and then to say anyone that wants to come in, come in.
What was the episode that? What was the guy's name from the foie gras episode? Do you remember the farmer's name? I know you reference him a lot, but I don't know if you remember his name. But you when we talked about that, which I still think is one of my favorite conversations. You guys reference, like, because you picked up on him talking about like being a fifth generation and the place being named Hard Land. And the thing that as you're talking about like being alone and not having others and we need cultivation, is like the great grandpa who didn't see this foie gras, who didn't see the TED Talk, who didn't see the like worldwide impact of the effort, but loved geese and tilled the land and worked on this hard place. And, just remembering stories like that for us to go, some of these things, whether reform or revolution or whatever they are, these are seeds we're sowing for generations to come. That, there's a lot of things we may not be around to see, but and this is back to the return on investment question. It's like, this is why it has to be about the love. It's like what we're getting in the work itself, in the engagement itself, the meaning itself, because if it's about the income or the results or the fruit or the others, like all of those wear on us.
Right.
It's good chat. It's good chat, boys.
I'm glad we got to do it.
You for being our sponsor again, and check them out. Rewire You University.
Super grateful for those guys.
All right, boys.
All right. See you
Thank
guys
you.
next time.
Peace out.
All right.